All right, y'all. I'm back with part 2 of the NIL lawsuit, Jaden Rashada versus Billy Napier, Velocity Automotive, and one other guy that works for University of Florida. Anyway, this video will be a little bit more entertaining because this one has the charges and what they want done. So it's a little more entertaining and it's a little shorter. So it'll go a little bit faster. So we left at where Jaden was left with no assurances at all. They canceled his $13.85 million NIL deal, and NIL is out of control, especially at the University of Florida. So here we go. Defendants continue to make false promises. Unfortunately, defendants' fraudulent activity did not stop there. In violation of Florida law, Castro Walker initially and Coach Napier later made extraordinary efforts to persuade Jaden that they would make good on the promised NIL compensation despite the termination of the Gator Collective's contract. The defendants continue to lie and make material misrepresentations to Jaden, Harlan, and Jaden's NIL agents. Defendants' goals were twofold. One, to ensure Jaden remained committed to UF, and two, to avoid paying promised NIL funds. Defendants knew that for most college athletes, the prospect of NIL earnings is life-changing. Defendants exploited this fact in their own personal advantage. Specifically, on December 7, 2022, Castro Walker told Jaden's agents that Hathcock's Gator Guard Collective would accept assignment of the $13.85 million deal promised to Jaden. Castro Walker also relayed that Hathcock, through the Gator Guard, would personally guarantee the $13.85 million obligation himself. To facilitate this new arrangement, defendants represented that the Gator Collective would retract its unfounded termination, and once the agreement was uncanceled, the $13.85 million obligation would be assigned to the Gator Guard Collective. In accordance with this proposal, on December 9, 2022, Hathcock wired an initial $150,000 payment to Jaden. Hathcock provided this $150,000 payment so that Jaden could avoid possible litigation with Miami booster John Ruiz, who was seeking repayment from the $9.5 million deal after Jaden flipped his commitment from Miami to UF. Castro Walker said that he was working with Hathcock to finalize the contractual assignment. However, despite the repeated inquiries, by December 19th, Hathcock had still not executed the assignment. Defendants fraudulently induced Jaden to sign a national letter of intent with UF. December 21st, 2022 was signing day for the 2023 NCAA Division I football early commit students. By this date, 2 weeks after the defendants assured Jaden that Hathcock would assume the $13.85 million deal, Hathcock still had not done so. Jaden had also not received the promised $500,000 signing bonus. Jaden tolerated this delay, believing that Hathcock, who had made promises to induce him to flip to UF, all the while bragging about it on Twitter, would keep his promises. Seems like a reasonable thing to me. Someone says something, they're going to abide by it, especially when there's a contract. As the hour approached for Jaden to sign his national letter of intent, Jaden asked his agents, Zeiger and Thompson, and his dad, Harlan, "Can I sign?" Knowing he still had not received any payments for committing to UF. Zeiger responded, "Not yet," hoping that the defendants would wire the payments owed to Jaden. Meanwhile, Zeiger and Thompson discussed the money owed to Jaden with Castro Walker and Hathcock. Castro Walker called Harlan to give assurance that Jaden would receive the $500,000 and all promised payments going forward. In response to Jaden delaying the signing of his national letter of intent, Coach Napier personally called Jaden and Harlan to convince Jaden to sign. During his phone call with Harlan, Coach Napier relayed that Jaden would be receiving $1 million from Hathcock as a partial payment towards the promised $13.85 million once Jaden formally signed his national letter of intent with UF that day. Relying on Napier's promise, Jaden was induced to go ahead and sign his letter of intent before the defendants made good on any of their commitments. Harlan reported this conversation to Zeiger and Thompson, stating, "Coach Napier said Hathcock's on a plane and that he will wire $1 million He wants the paperwork, and I'm sending it if you are good. In addition, Castro Walker emphasized Coach Napier's promises, telling Jaden's agent that Napier would, quote, get it done, and emphasizing Napier's power as a head coach. Castro Walker also increased pressure on Jaden to sign by telling him if he did not do it right away, Coach Napier might pull back his scholarship offer. Of course, Castro Walker, Napier, and Hathcock all knew that Jaden signing the national letter of intent on signing day would commit Jaden to UF and significantly and adversely affect his ability to secure other recruiting opportunities and related NIL deals. On December 21st, 2022, less than an hour after Coach Napier assured Jaden's father that $1 million would be wired from Hathcock, Jaden signed his national letter of intent with UF. Jaden withdraws his commitment to UF. After inducing Jaden to sign his national letter of intent on signing day, the next few weeks consisted of a series of new promises of NIL agreements that consistently remained unfulfilled. Ultimately, Jaden was left with no faith in the UF's football team's leadership and the individuals who had constantly lied to him. On January 18, 2023, Jaden withdrew his national letter of intent to play for UF. After exploring several other colleges, Jaden chose to begin his college career where his father played football, Arizona State University. Interestingly, Jaden neither sought nor was promised any type of NIL commitment from Arizona State. Recently, on April 19, 2024, Jaden entered the transfer portal and selected the University of Georgia as the school he would attend beginning in the 2024-2025 school year. Similarly to his decision to attend Arizona State, Jaden's decision to attend Georgia this year was not in response to any promises, assurances, or offers connected to NIL money. He had learned his lesson. Claims for relief. Each of the paragraphs of this complaint is incorporated by reference as if restated fully in each of the counts listed. Count 1, fraudulent misrepresentation and fraudulent inducement against William Billy Napier, Marcus Castro Walker, Hugh Hathcock, and Velocity Automotive Solutions, LLC. Under Florida law, the elements of fraudulent misrepresentation and fraudulent inducement are A, a false statement concerning material fact, B, the presenter's knowledge or representer's knowledge that the representation is false, and intention that the representation induce another to act on it, and D, consequent injury by the party acting in reliance on the representation. For the second element, the actual knowledge of falsity is not required. That element can also be established where defendants acted 1, with actual knowledge of falsity of the representation, 2, without knowledge either of the representation's truth or its falsity, or 3, under circumstances in which the person making the representations ought to have known if the person did not know of its falsity. Collectively, these 3 mental states are referred to as herein as scienter. That footnote number 3 was just Breyer versus Decay, which I know nothing about. We'll have to look that up later. Acting with scienter, Hathcock, on behalf of himself and Velocity Automotive, Castro Walker, and Coach Napier, defrauded Jaden initially by falsely promising $13.85 million when such promise could not be fulfilled, and neither they nor Hathcock had any intention on filling it. In addition, acting with scienter, defendants defrauded Jaden by promising to honor the terms of the initial NIL deal even after purporting to terminate it, in a continued effort to persuade Jaden to sign a national letter of intent with UF and thereafter maintain his commitment to play football at UF. For instance, as alleged above, with acting with scienter, defendants continued to defraud Jaden by fraudulently misrepresenting that he would be paid $1 million towards the $13.85 million NIL contract once he signed his national letter of intent. Acting with scienter, defendants further defrauded Jaden by promising that Hathcock's collective, Gator Guard Marketing, LLC, would accept assignment of the $13.85 million contract with the Gator Collective when the defendants knew or should have known that Gator Guard Marketing LLC either was not a real entity or it had no ability or intent to accept the assignment of Jaden's NIL deal. Acting with scienter, the defendants made additional false statements of material fact to induce Jaden's reliance. Jaden justifiably relied on defendants' representations to his detriment by decommitting from Miami and abandoning the $9.5 million NIL deal, as well as foregoing other recruitment opportunities and related NIL deals. Defendants concealed their strategy and intentions to defraud Jaden with the $13.85 million deal. In fact, Jaden did not discover the defendants' true intentions until 2023, after the defendants attempted to retrade the NIL deal after their months of coordinated lies, manipulation, and deceit. Jaden did not know or have reason to know about defendants' fraudulent conduct until after he withdrew his national letter of intent from UF. As a result of defendants' actions, Jaden has suffered damages. Count 2. Aiding and abetting fraud against William, Billy Napier, Marcus Castro Walker, Hugh Hathcock, and Velocity Automotive. Under Florida law, the elements of aiding and abetting fraud are A, the existence of an underlying fraud, B, that the defendant had knowledge of the fraud, and C, that the defendant provided substantial assistance to advance the commission of the fraud. Hathcock, on behalf of himself and Velocity Automotive, Castro Walker, and Coach Napier, orchestrated and executed a fraud upon Jaden, were substantially and knowingly assisted by one another in carrying out the fraud. Each of their individual schemes would not have succeeded without assistance from one another. Each defendant knew of the other's false and fraudulent misrepresentations that induced Jaden to flip from Miami and forego his $9.5 million deal. These misrepresentations principally included the defendant's offer to Jaden of the $13.85. That is a lot of money. I keep repeating it, but it's not getting any smaller, even though I keep saying it. In exchange for his attendance at UF. Defendants' misrepresentations included additional false assurances conveyed to Jaden after December 5th, 2022, when the NIL deal was purportedly terminated. Defendants acted with scienter as to the fact that defendants lacked any plans or ability to honor this promise. Despite being aware of the fraudulent misrepresentations, each defendant consistently provided false assurances to Jaden and his agents regarding the legitimacy of the NIL deal and their own commitments. For instance, Coach Napier and Castro Walker relayed to Jaden that he would be receiving $1 million from Hathcock as a partial payment towards the promised NIL funds, once he had formally signed his national letter of intent with UF. Hathcock had also held himself out publicly as capable and intending to meet his end of the bargain through social media posts indicating that successful deal was in the works. The defendants further aided and abetted the fraud against Jaden by promising to honor the terms of the initial NIL deal, even after purporting to terminate it. Defendants claimed that Hathcock's Gator Guard Collective would accept the assignment of the contract, in a continued effort to convince Jaden and his agents that he would receive NIL compensation if he stayed committed to UF. Defendants made these false assurances to persuade Jaden to sign the national letter of intent with UF. As a result, the defendants aiding and abetting fraud against Jaden, he had suffered considerable damages. These damages include the loss of the $9.5 million and other sponsored packages, and other such damages may be proved at trial. Count 3, civil conspiracy to commit fraud against William, Billy Napier, all the defendants. Under Florida law, the elements of civil conspiracy are an agreement between two or more parties, B, to do an unlawful act or do a lawful act by unlawful means, C, the doing of some overt act in pursuance of the conspiracy, and D, damage to the plaintiff as a result of the acts done under the conspiracy. Acting with Center, Hathcock, on behalf of himself and Velocity Automotive, Coach Napier and Castro Walker engaged in a civil conspiracy to defraud Jaden by agreeing between and amongst one another to fraudulently induce him to forego his NIL opportunity at Miami and to instead flip his commitment to UF. This conspiracy caused Jaden to incur significant damages. Defendants engaged in civil conspiracy because, as discussed in detail below, the defendants had their objective the commission of the underlying tort of fraud. And all these footnotes are just other cases that I don't know about and will have to look up later. Acting with scienter, defendants between and amongst themselves agreed initially to promise Jaden $13.85 million in exchange for his attendance at UF when the defendants lacked the intention or ability to pay him this sum. Indeed, defendants' failure to make even the first payment indicates that they lacked the financial resources and the intention to pay any of substantial sums they promised to Jaden. The agreement amongst defendants is evidenced by the defendants working together to fraudulently induce Jaden to attend UF and later to execute the national letter of intent. Specifically, with respect to Jaden's initial announcement that he was flipping from Miami to UF, Castro Walker, Coach Napier, and Hathcock made false promises that Jaden would receive $13.85 million in exchange for his attending UF. The purpose of these promises was obviously and indisputably to induce Jaden to change universities and football programs. Indeed, almost immediately after agreeing to the promised $13.85 million and in direct response to pressure to do so, Jaden announced that he would be switching his commitment to UF. The involvement and fraudulent intent of Hathcock is further evidenced by Hathcock's social media post shortly before Jaden's announcement. Hathcock, both directly and through his agents, specifically, successfully, and fraudulently induced Jaden to abandon his $9.5 million NIL agreement that was conditioned on his attending Miami. Castro Walker and Coach Napier told Jaden that Hathcock would fund the NIL payments. The combined efforts of Castro Walker, Coach Napier, and Hathcock, that name, with respect to many false representations surrounding Jaden's NIL deal, demonstrated the group's agreement to work together to defraud Jaden. Defendants thus agreed together to make the many and various fraudulent representations described in this complaint for the unlawful purpose of defrauding Jaden. Furthermore, acting with scienter after purporting to terminate the contract, defendants between and amongst themselves claimed that they agreed to assign the contract to Hathcock's collective, Gator Guard Marketing, LLC, when Gator Guard Marketing, LLC either was not a real entity or when the defendants lacked intention to do so. Moreover, defendants lacked not only the intention, but also the ability to convey the alleged assignment to Hathcock's collective. The agreement amongst the defendants is evidenced by a draft instrument entitled Assignment, purportedly between Hathcock's collective, Gator Guard Marketing, LLC, and the Gator Guard Collective, LLC. This draft document further shows the continued effort to convince Jaden and his agents that the terms of the NIL deal would be honored, only to prevent Jaden from backing out of the commitment before signing his letter of intent. Numerous overt acts, including verbal and written representations by each and every member of the conspiracy and those acting on their behalf, were performed as described in this complaint. Jaden suffered damages as a result of the defendant's false representations made throughout the course of this conspiracy. Count 4, negligent misrepresentations against all of the defendants. Under Florida law, the elements of negligent misrepresentation are A, a misrepresentation of material fact, B, the lack of knowledge by the representer as to the truth or falsity of the representation, or circumstances under which he ought to have known of its falsity. C, the intent by the representer that the representation induce another to act on it. And 4, injury to the plaintiff as a result of acting in justifiable reliance on the misrepresentation. To the extent of the many misrepresentations alleged do not rise to the level of fraud, Jaden alternately sues defendants Napier, Castro Walker, Hathcock, and Velocity Automotive for negligent misrepresentation. Specifically, each of these defendants is negligently supplied false information in the course of their business, profession, employment, or alternatively in a transaction in which they had pecuniary interest. Write that one down. I like learning new words. For some reason, that word doesn't look familiar. Defendants provided this false information to induce Jaden to forego a business deal with Miami-affiliated NIL and to instead enter a business transaction with the defendants. In providing this false information, defendants failed to exercise the reasonable care or competence. Jaden justifiably relied on these negligent misrepresentations, and as a result, he suffered pecuniary loss. Count 5, tortious interference. Oh, good old tortious interference with a business relationship or contract agent against all the defendants. Under Florida law, the elements of tortious interference with a business relationship or contract are A, the existence of a business relationship, not necessarily the evidence by an enforceable contract. B, knowledge of the relationship on the part of the defendant. C, an intentional and unjustified interference with the relationship by the defendant. And D, damage to the plaintiff as a result of the breach of the relationship. Hathcock, on behalf of himself and Velocity Automotive, Castro Walker, and Coach Napier, tortiously interfered with Jaden's $9.5 million NIL agreement and business relationship with Miami. As explained above, Jaden had an existing $9.5 million agreement with Miami-affiliated NIL, and at the very least, Jaden's NIL deal with Miami's collective constituted an existing business relationship. $9.5 million of a relationship, I'd say so. Ooh, this is going to be fun to watch. The defendants knew about Jaden's NIL deal and relationship with Miami because it was widely publicized in the media because it was specifically communicated to Hathcock during the summer of 2022 in the midst of their initial recruitment efforts. Despite defendants' knowledge of this existing agreement and business relationship, defendants fraudulently induced Jaden to abandon that agreement and relationship to secure commitment from Jaden to play football for UF. Defendants induced Jaden by offering him a superior $13.85 million with UF's collective for the use of his NIL. That is, defendants falsely promised to exceed Jaden's Miami deal by nearly $4 million or more than 40%. Defendants did so knowing such a promise could not be fulfilled without knowledge of whether or not such a promise could be fulfilled or under circumstances in which one ought to have known such a promise could not be fulfilled. Defendants' wholly run-on sentence. Defendants knew that their false promises would cause Jaden to lose his opportunity to earn the funds promised by Miami. Defendants specifically intended to end Jaden's agreement and business relationship with Miami for their own personal benefit and to Jaden's detriment. As a result of defendants' tortious interference with Jaden's agreement and business relationship with the Miami collective, Jaden suffered a pecuniary loss. Count 6, aiding and abetting tortious interference. Under Florida law, the elements of aiding and abetting tortious interference are A, the existing of an underlying tortious interference, the existence. B, that the defendant had knowledge of the tortious interference, and C, that the defendant provided substantial assistance to advance the commission of the tortious interference. Because Florida courts have recognized aiding and abetting the commission of a tort as a standalone claim, aiding and abetting tortious interference is a valid cause of action under Florida law. Hathcock, Castro Walker, and Coach Napier tortiously interfered with Jaden's $9.5 million deal and business relationship with Miami. The defendants also provided substantial assistance to one another to advance the tortious interference with Jaden's $9.5 million agreement and business relationship with Miami. Each defendant knew of Jaden's $9.5 million deal with Miami and knew of the other false misrepresentations that each made to induce Jaden to commit to UF. They also had no knowledge of one way or the other, or ought to have known that Hathcock and his companies had no intention of paying Jaden the promised funds, that the funds would not be provided from any other entity, and that Jaden would lose the ability to earn the funds promised by Miami. Despite this knowledge, each defendant provided substantial assistance to the others with the aim to end Jaden's agreement and business relationship with Miami for their own personal benefit and to Jaden's detriment. Due to defendants aiding and abetting each other of each other in this tortious interference, Jaden suffered pecuniary damages. Count 7. Liability. Vicarious liability against Velocity Automotive. Under Florida law, the elements of vicarious liability are A, an employee committed a negligent act, and B, the act was either 1, within the scope of employment, or 2, during the course of employment and to further the purpose or interest of the employer. Hathcock was an officer, employee, agent, and or servant of Velocity Automotive. Velocity Automotive is vicariously responsible for the acts, errors, and or omissions of Hathcock as previously set forth herein. Damages time. Plaintiff Jaden Rashada incorporates by reference the allegations of paragraphs counts 1 through 7 as if restated verbatim herein. The defendant's actions both jointly and severally caused Jaden significant damages. In particular, as a proximate result of defendant's actions, among other things, Jaden, 1, lost the $9.5 million NIL agreement related to his attendance at Miami, and 2, lost the opportunity to pursue other NIL deals from other collectives after being induced to commit to UF based on fraudulent assurances. Additionally, to the extent of any of the defendants acted with malice, Jaden is entitled to punitive damages, and award such damages would assist in deterring and preventing similar conduct in the future. That is where I think that this case will change NIL forever, which quite frankly is needed. I love that the schools are not getting all the money that the kids are entitled to. I mean, the schools profit off of these kids. So why not give the kids a chunk of the money? However, it is so unregulated right now, it is ridiculous. Conditions precedent. All conditions precedent to Jaden's right to recover have occurred and have been waived or performed. And they demand a trial by jury. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the whole initial filing. I will be keeping up on this case very, very closely because I love college football. I'm a huge college football fan. Saturdays in my house during college football season, we do nothing else but order wings and watch football all day. Anyway, if you're interested in this case, like, subscribe, and share this video so that everybody else can see it too. Have a great night, guys.